What's up? What is going on, my party people? So today's video we're going to talk about the threat of foreign invasion for SHTF and why it's probably the most unrealistic and ridiculous thing you can plan for. So let's just get right into it. First of all, I want you to think in more recent history when the US was invaded, when we had foreign troops touch down on American soil. And I'm not talking about revolutionary times, I mean like in the last 100 years. I can name a time. It was when the Japanese were able to put foot infantry on islands in Alaska, in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. That happened. Most of them froze to death, but whole other topic for a different time. How would a country like Russia or China, Iran, North Korea land paratroopers anywhere in this country and then sustain them to have them do anything effective? There really is no way to do it. The most realistic way I think it could be done is with all the trade we do with China, and they would just load a shipping container, one of those big ships, those shipping ships, with regular goods. But on that shipping container, every 40th one maybe is packed with infantry. And then every, couple hundred of them are packed with ammo, not but ammo and logistical support, like their version of MREs and all that stuff. That's really the only way I think it could be done, but even then, how would they get very far very fast? Doesn't make much sense. And no, the reason they wouldn't get very far is not because of Joe Civilian with his AR-15. Joe Civilian by himself, even with his little group of like 5 guys, 5, 10, 20 guys even, doesn't have much of a chance in an open, straight engagement with a platoon or a battalion of trained infantry. No, not going to happen. I don't care how high speed you think you are. You read your Ranger training book or something. That shit doesn't apply to you. You're not backed by logistics. So there's that. And let's dive into this more. Some say, oh, I'm prepared for the threat of terrorism. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. And even then, those are lone wolf attacks, very seldomly coordinated, like in mass, like we're seeing in France, in recent times, and more recent years when they took out that concert hall and lit that place up. Now, these terrorist organizations, I don't have to say it, we all know who I'm talking about. They were trained, armed, and equipped by the U.S. government. Just the way it is. So if something like that does happen, you know who to blame. The people who trained them and armed them and funded them for the past 30 years, plus years. When the Soviets were in Afghanistan, who was funding and training and arming and all that stuff? Again, you know who it is. It's the military-industrial complex. And I firmly believe that the only reason organizations like ISIS and things like that exist is because the military-industrial complex needs an excuse to keep the jaws of the war machine running and keep the contractors paid. That's really it, but we're not going to get too much more into that. Foreign invasion is really a waste of time. They don't have the means to get people over here. Even if they did, how do they sustain them? How do they supply them? You can't do it. The only reason the U.S. was able to do it back in World War II, when we were going through all these countries, we had support in England. In France, we were getting all our logistics were planned out. They really don't have that much support to do such a thing. And then even if they were able to get guys over here, get them sustained and all that, these foot soldiers, they don't care about you. They're not looking for you. They're trying to get their objectives conquered. That's it. Infrastructure. That's all it would be. They're not looking for Joe Civilian with his AR. The minute you start taking pot shots at them, yeah, that's when you get surrounded, outnumbered, outflanked, and eliminated. That's how that works. The U.S. just lost a 20-year war against a bunch of opium farmers. How and why? It was never really, well, there were head-to-head battles, and these goat farmers were wiped out in the head-to-head battles. So how'd they do it? With an insurgency. That's how you defeat a foreign occupation right there. This Ranger handbook, close with the enemy and conquer, is not going to work. So there's just that. You can look at what's going on in Ukraine right now with how Russia's invaded Ukraine and all this stuff. I don't care what side you're on or how you feel about it, it doesn't matter. They're seizing assets. They're taking ground. They don't care about the civilians living there. They're not looking for civilians. Were people taken out in the crossfire between Russia and Ukraine, or are there some rogue soldiers doing bad things on both sides? Yeah, and it's horrible. But sad to say, that's war. It is. And the average soldier is not looking for you. Doesn't want to deal with you. And has no interest in that. So, play that how you want it. And even if, let's play this, role play this scenario a little bit more. If a foreign invasion did happen, why would you fight back? There was a time in antiquity, almost fumbled that word, when battles were fought with leaders. We're leading the foot mobiles. We're leading the regular shock troops. Because they're the ones that had the most to lose. The regular common plebs and peons don't really have much to lose or gain when the adversary comes. As long as you have your wife, your kids, and your farm, that's all you have to worry about. But the fat cats, the oligarchs on top that have the means of production, I'm not a communist, I'm just using their terminology, that's how it's worded. They have the money, they have most to lose, so they led from the front. But nowadays, if we were invaded, what does the average Joe soldier or Joe civilian get by defending BlackRock or defending these big corporations that have made it impossible for him to rank up in the system, to climb the system chain? How many of you guys, the younger guys that watch my channel, you guys own a house or are you renting? How much music do you listen to? How much do you actually own, or is it all just rented through Spotify? You will own nothing and you will like it. You are terminally broke. You are terminally leasing and renting and will never own anything. Because these big corporations like BlackRock and so on and so forth have already bought and owned everything. You are just leasing it from them. So why are you going to fight for society that hasn't given you anything? That you own no stake in? Truth be told, if a foreign invasion happened, I'm not doing jack shit. I don't think you should either. But that's a whole other story for another time. Your preps are more better spent once again on food, water, medical, physical fitness, and having the means to protect yourself. A rifle, handgun. Having some armor is always good too. But that's just my TED Talk for the day. Just seeing a lot of this stuff coming back up about how Americans need to be ready. What you do need to be prepared. It's never a bad thing to be prepared. But all this, for the threat of foreign invasion nonsense, let's face it, it ain't going to happen. Even if it did, the enemy doesn't care about you. You have no chance if they did. And truth be told, why would you even care if they did invade? Because you have no stake in society. So anyway, let me get off my soapbox. Go forth, do great things, stay out of trouble. Deuces.